When my father raised his glass that night, he didn't say my name. He looked straight at my sister and said, "To the child who makes me proud." Everyone laughed. My mother clapped. Even her fiancé smiled like it was some royal coronation. I just sat there, holding the rim of my glass, wondering how a single sentence could erase a lifetime. The words didn't sting because they were cruel. They stung because they were true to them. I wasn't the daughter they admired, or the story they told their friends. I was the quiet one, the one they never quite figured out, the one they dismissed without realizing they were building the very silence that would someday bury them. My name is Sarah Franklin, and that was the last Thanksgiving they ever underestimated me. The snow on the road sounded like the earth exhaling as my tires crushed through it. The old house came into view, a dark silhouette against the pale hills. Once, that porch light meant warmth, safety, family. Now, it felt like a warning flicker. Too bright, too familiar, too far gone. Inside, the air smelled of roast turkey and cinnamon, laughter rolling through the rooms like an echo from a time I didn't belong to anymore. My father stood at the head of the table, posture stiff with pride, his voice filling every corner of the house. Brittany hovered next to him, all confidence and perfume, glowing the way people do when they believe the spotlight is where they were born to stand. Her fiancé, Ethan Cole, wore his dress blues like armor, calm and unreadable, the kind of man small towns build legends around. I stepped inside quietly, the cold still clinging to my coat. Brittany turned. Too sweet, too rehearsed. "Sarah, you actually came. Everyone, this is my sister, the one who hides behind government paperwork in D.C. Laughter, the kind that invites everyone in but me. I smiled anyway, because it was easier than explaining the ache. My father poured wine, his gold watch catching the light. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the edge of a small steel box, just enough to remind myself what I carried. He raised his glass. "To the child who makes me proud." The glass in my hand trembled. Just a little. Across the table, Brittany beamed beneath the toast, radiant in a way only approval can make someone glow. And I understood then. Some wars don't happen overseas. They happen here, between the clink of silverware and the sound of your own name being forgotten. Brittany insisted I come to the engagement party, as if hauling me into a crowded room could make up for 6 years of silence. The Veterans Hall glowed with soft amber light, the air thick with perfume, fried food, and nostalgia. The whole town was there. Pastor Whitman, old Mr. Carter from the gas station, women from my mother's church circle, dressed in sequins and gossip. The band played country covers loud enough to shake the floorboards, drowning out anything that might have been sincere. Brittany moved through the crowd like she owned the oxygen. People clapped her shoulder, touched her ring, called her lucky, and maybe she was. When she reached me, she looked like someone performing joy rather than feeling it. "Come on, Sarah, mingle," she said, tugging my arm. "You look like a guest at your own funeral." I let her drag me forward. Ethan stood by the punch table, posture crisp, charm effortless. He had the kind of presence small towns worship, steady, certain, someone who never had to explain himself. He smiled as I approached, offered a handshake that was firm but measured. His eyes flickered down, stopping at the faint glint beneath my sweater, where a silver pin caught the light. "Nice pin," he said, tone curious. I could swear I've seen that emblem somewhere before. Maybe somewhere you'd rather forget. I told him. The smile faltered, but he didn't look away. There was something calculating behind his calm, recognition searching for a name. Brittany swooped in, wrapping her arm through his, voice bright as glass. "Let's not bore him with office talk," she said. "Sarah's work stories put people to sleep faster than melatonin." Laughter rippled across the table. My father grinned. My mother nodded approvingly. I smiled too, the way you do when it's easier than correcting someone. The band started another song, louder, faster, something about forever love. I stood at the edge of the room, invisible in plain sight, watching them all celebrate the illusion of knowing one another. The lights blurred around the edges. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the ache of being both present and absent in the same moment. Ethan kept glancing my way through the night, like a man tracing the outline of a memory he couldn't place. When the crowd cheered for Brittany's speech, his eyes drifted back to me again. By the time the music faded, my cheeks hurt from pretending. I slipped outside into the parking lot, the cold hitting me like truth. The air smelled of diesel and pine, the wind cutting through my coat. I opened the small steel box from my pocket. The silver pin rested inside, dull under the streetlight, unassuming to anyone who didn't know its weight. They were never supposed to know, I whispered, breath turning white in the dark. I closed the box, slid it back into my coat, and let the wind take the rest. Ethan couldn't sleep. Brittany's perfume clung to the sheets, sweet and suffocating. The hotel room hummed with the sound of a radiator working too hard. He got up, sat at the desk, and opened his laptop. The glow hit his face like a confession. He typed an old login he hadn't used in years, one reserved for the kind of files you never talk about. A line appeared on the screen. Operation Night Silhouette, 2018. He scrolled through until he found it. 3 words buried in the last report. S. Franklin, Overwatch Command Authorization. His throat tightened, and then he heard it. Not in the room, but in memory. The voice that cut through chaos over the comms 5 years ago. Abort mission. There's a child behind that wall. He'd replayed that voice in his head every night afterward, wondering who she was, wondering why someone he never met had risked their career to save his team. Now he knew. He opened another file. The symbol appeared on the screen, a dagger encircled by wings. Sentinel Outreach, the same emblem that had glinted on Sarah's lapel tonight. He leaned back, the chair creaking under him, outside the window. The Montana night stretched black and endless, the same darkness he'd stared into overseas. No one would believe it. The quiet sister, the invisible one, the joke at the dinner table. She'd been the voice that saved 12 men, including him. He closed the laptop, sat in the red glow of the bedside lamp, pulse heavy in his throat. Tomorrow, he'd have to look her in the eye, and somehow pretend he didn't know that the woman his fiancé mocked had once held his life in her steady hands. The morning after the engagement party, the sky over Montana looked too clean, too cold to trust. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, thin and sharp. My mother hummed as she set the table. My father hid behind his newspaper, and Brittany sat at the counter, curling her hair, like the room was her mirror. Ethan sat quietly, half awake, his coffee untouched. Brittany broke the silence with her favorite subject, herself. Ethan's been reassigned to Washington after the wedding. Isn't that amazing, Sarah? Finally, someone in the family working for the government without just pushing papers. The smell of burnt toast and hairspray mixed into something nauseating. I took a sip of coffee and said, "Someone has to clean up the paperwork when others mess up the job." The room froze. My father's paper rustled. "You always have that tone," he said. "Maybe because you've never dealt with real pressure." I looked at him, calm. "Not true. I just don't need to talk about it." Brittany laughed. "The mysterious Sarah act again. What do you even do that's so important?" Ethan shifted. His voice was low, deliberate. "Some people can't talk about their work, not because they're ashamed, but because they're not allowed to." Our eyes met for barely a second, but that was enough. Brittany noticed. "Are you defending her now?" My father slammed the paper onto the table. "Enough. No one in this family needs secrets." The words landed like a verdict. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. I held my coffee tighter, feeling the heat fade. The truth didn't need me to speak. Someone else would do it for me soon enough. After breakfast, I stepped onto the porch. The frost shimmered on the railing. I opened the small steel box from my coat, the pin catching the light, silver, cold, waiting. Secrets never stay buried, I thought. They rise when silence becomes unbearable. That night, the table glowed with candles. all pretense and polish. My mother's smile strained with effort. My father tried to sound proud. Brittany sparkled in red. It might have passed for harmony if you ignored the tension buzzing under every breath. "Ethan, tell everyone about that mission in Syria," Brittany said too loudly. "He's such a hero. Sarah, you'd be amazed." I smiled faintly. "I already know." Her eyes narrowed. "Know what?" "That sometimes the one who stops the order saves more lives than the one who gives it." The words hit the table like a dropped knife. My father stared. "What order? Just something old," I said. Ethan's hand tightened around his glass. He remembered. The voice in his headset years ago. "Abort mission. There's a child behind that wall." The same tone, the same calm. Brittany laughed, sharp. "Don't let her ruin the mood. Ethan," I said softly. "My office only oversees people like him." My father's brow furrowed. "Stop pretending. Sarah, you know nothing about combat." "Enough," I said, to recognize when someone aims wrong. The air broke. My mother's fork clattered. Brittany flushed. "What's that supposed to mean? Some mistakes go unreported." "But I remember." Brittany scoffed. "You've watched too many movies. Or maybe you've never watched someone die in real time." Ethan's glass slammed down. Wine splashed crimson across the white cloth. "Enough." "Brittany!" The room fell silent. I stood, steady. "Thanks for dinner. I'm full." I walked away, not to flee, but to keep control. Because the next time anyone reached for that pin, I knew there'd be no taking it back. The night before the engagement, the town's finest restaurant gleamed in amber light. Jazz played low, laughter ran too loud, and every smile seemed forced. I arrived late, not to make an entrance, but because I preferred walking into the noise after it peaked. Brittany spotted me immediately. "Sarah, you finally showed up. Still working on those top-secret office files?" Laughter rippled across the table. I slipped off my coat and took my seat, the silver pin on my black blazer catching the light. Ethan's eyes lingered on it longer than anyone noticed, except Brittany. "That again?" she teased. "You really love those fake military trinkets, huh?" I smiled without answering. The waiter poured wine, and Brittany, ever the entertainer, lifted her glass. "Ethan, tell everyone about your mission in Syria," she said. "The story's incredible. Not a dinner topic," he muttered. "Oh, come on, don't be modest." She touched his shoulder. He didn't move, eyes still on me. The silence stretched. Brittany's grin sharpened. "Afraid I'll correct your report?" I asked. He blinked, confused, and I added, softly, "I don't correct reports. I approve them." The chatter died. Even the waiter froze. Brittany laughed too loud. "Approve? What are you talking about?" "It's real," I said. "But pretend it's not, if that helps." Ethan's glass touched the table with a soft clink. His expression shifted. Recognition, disbelief, something close to respect. He knew. Brittany looked around, desperate to reclaim attention. "Well, that's interesting. Ethan, tell the real story. Don't let Sarah's metaphors put everyone to sleep. Maybe people fall asleep when they've heard the same fake story too often," I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by that? Some truths are only known to the ones who were there?" The words landed hard. I could see it in Ethan's face. If he stayed quiet, I'd keep his secret. If he denied it, I'd know who he really was. No one else understood. But the mood shifted. The laughter was gone. Only the faint scrape of knives against plates remained. I looked at Brittany. "Don't dig into what this pin means. Some things keep you awake for life." The table fell silent. No one met my eyes. Hours later, the party was ending, and Brittany was drunk. Her voice slurred as she rose to her feet. "All right, I'm asking, what is that thing? Sarah? Don't say it's office memorabilia." Before I could answer, she stumbled closer and reached for the pin. The metallic click echoed as her nail brushed it. Ethan shot up, catching her wrist. "Don't touch what you don't understand." Every head turned. Light gleamed off the silver pin. His hand, her pale face. My father stood, voice uncertain. "Ethan, what's going on?" Ethan inhaled slowly. "That pin can't be bought. The person who wears it outranks my commander." He looked at me. I nodded once. "She led the operation that saved my unit in Syria. She's Overwatch Command with Sentinel Outreach." The silence afterward was brutal. My mother dropped her fork. My father sank into his chair. Brittany stared as if language had failed her. "Impossible," she whispered. "She works in an office." "No," Ethan said softly. "She stopped an airstrike. Without her, I'd be dead." I stood. I never wanted anyone to owe me. I just wanted people to stop judging what they can't comprehend. I left them there, the laughter gone, replaced by the sound of glass breaking behind me. The party collapsed into silence. Brittany ran from the room, her sobs echoing down the hall. My mother gathered plates without looking at anyone, movements mechanical, as if cleaning could undo what she'd heard. My father sat frozen, pride draining from his face. Ethan stayed standing. His voice was low, rough. "I owe you my life. You don't." I said, "I didn't save anyone. I just did my job." "If you hadn't stopped that order," he whispered, "I wouldn't be here." I met his eyes. "I didn't stop it for you. I stopped it for the child behind the wall." The air shifted. No one spoke. My father blinked hard, his voice unsteady. "You carried this all these years, and never told us?" "If I had, I'd have broken my oath." I said, "And I wasn't raised to chase praise." In the doorway, Brittany stood trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I didn't look at her. I only said, quietly, "I don't need anyone to understand me. I just need them to stop speaking for me." Then I turned away. The sound of my own footsteps, steady and final, an answer sharper than any shout. That night, Montana felt colder than I remembered, cold enough for every breath to turn to smoke. I stepped outside to the porch, the wood creaking under my boots, and sat down on the old chair that still leaned slightly to one side. Streetlights spilled pale gold across the snow. Each flake fell soundlessly, landing, melting, disappearing like a secret that had finally found its rest. Behind me, the door opened. Ethan stepped out, closing it softly. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, staring at the frozen yard. "I thought I knew what responsibility meant," he said finally, his voice rough. "But tonight proved me wrong." I didn't look at him. "Responsibility isn't about retelling what you did." I said, "It's about living with it afterward." He nodded, pulling a cigarette from his coat but never lighting it. "You never told anyone about Night Silhouette?" "There was no need. The only reason I stopped the strike was because your radar locked on the wrong coordinates. There was a child behind that wall." He bowed his head, voice cracking. "I know. I still dream about that wall." We sat in silence. Two people from opposite worlds, one who followed orders, one who gave them, now meeting halfway in the dark. "It's better if you didn't know who I was," I murmured. "People need their heroes." He turned toward me, eyes tired but kind. "You were ours." I shook my head. "I did my job. The reward is silence." The back door creaked open again. My mother stood there, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She looked at me for a long time, her face soft, voice trembling. "You've always been quiet," she said. "But tonight, I finally heard you." Something inside me loosened. I smiled, and for the first time in years, it didn't hurt to breathe. She stepped forward and took my hand. No apology, no speeches, just the trembling touch of a mother who finally understood too late, and just in time. 6 months later, winter had returned to Washington with its usual stillness, gray skies, frozen air, and that heavy quiet that always seems to hang over the city after the first snow. My office had no windows, only the steady hum of machines and the dim glow of satellite screens mapping conflicts I might never see, but would somehow have to stop. They'd promoted me to Regional Strategy Director. The title carried more responsibility, more silence, and strangely, more peace. Late in the afternoon, a cream-colored envelope appeared on my desk. My name was written in looping handwriting I recognized immediately. The sender, Brittany Cole. Inside was a wedding invitation, ivory cardstock, gold embossing, flawless as ever. But tucked within was a smaller note, written in Ethan's firm, careful script. To the woman who saw before anyone else, we saved you a seat at the head table. Respect. Ethan! I stared at it for a long time, the words sinking in like warmth after cold. Then I placed the note beside the silver pin resting in its steel box. The light from the monitors hit the metal, and the word respect shimmered faintly against the wall. They call him the hero, I whispered. I just made sure the world didn't explode. I closed the box, slid it into the drawer, and watched the snow begin to fall again, soft, slow, and forgiving. Real power doesn't shout. It remembers.